Sean Astin.
Hello, Sean.
Oh my gosh.
What's going
How are
on,
you?
man?
I was here before.
I think you were.
And right in this chair, when I was here, hi everybody,
How are you?
was Wycliffe Jean.
Is that right?
When he was about to run for president
How did he
in
do?
Haiti. I think he withdrew. I think he didn't go very far. But I gave him some great political advice before he quit. Sorry. Hi, everybody.
What show was it?
What show? I don't know. But it was this chair, I swear.
It was.
It was.
Well,
Might have
welcome.
been.
Was it Opie and Anthony?
No.
No,
No.
I don't know.
It was when the Haiti thing. I mean, it was like 2008, 9.
Oh,
somewhere. I mean, it was a
okay,
long
yeah.
time ago.
Might have been an afternoon. Well,
We're older
welcome
now.
to the show.
Man,
Happy
you
you're here.
you must.
That was an entrance, wasn't it?
It was
Yeah,
great.
it sure was.
It was great.
Sorry.
Yeah, because Wyclef, we were trying to figure out how do we segue into him, and you came in.
Yeah, we really want to get to the bottom of Wyclef stuff, and we can just go right there. You must be loving the response you're getting on Stranger Things.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I mean,
it's really fun. Not just for me, but my oldest kid's at college, and our two younger kids, 15 and 12, we're like, it's really special for them that we sit and we talk, and we my 12-year-old binged it, and then we talked about it all, and we get to it's pretty cool. They're excited about some of the press and stuff.
How long have you been in Hollywood?
I was born there. I was born in Hollywood. My parents are sort of legendary, actually. Who asked that? Did you ask that?
I did.
Oh, you asked that over there. It was this ear. Sorry. So my mom is Patty Duke, who won an Oscar when she was 14 for playing Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker, and my dad is John Astin, who was. Well, he was Gomez in the Addams Family, the original Addams Family, but he was also one of the Riddlers in the television Batman.
Right. Of course.
So, but they anyhow. So I was in the bosom.
So you've been familiar with that stuff. So when you're talking about all the stuff that's happened with Corey Feldman and stuff, you were there and saw that your whole life.
Saw what?
Whatever has been happening in Hollywood.
Yeah. Corey's my friend. I've been talking to him a lot lately.
People are giving him a lot of shit lately. Do you think they're right or wrong to say, hey, you should have named people, or is he like right to kind of go, whoa, I got
$10 million is a lot of money.
There's a lot of issues to separate out with that. First and foremost is he was abused as a child, and that gives him an awful lot of room to express himself and develop himself. And he's got his whole rationale, and he's been in so many interviews lately, and he should speak for himself about how and why and who he talks about things. But I think it's unfolding. I think it's unfolding well. I think he's legitimately opened himself up for criticism because of the overlap between personal gain and a crusade to help other people. But at the same time, a lot of the people who support him don't care. They want to see what he does. They want to see if he can actually help people. So as his friend, I kind of have a sober. I'm like his auntie. I'm like, are you eating? Are you getting enough sleep? And he's doing what he believes is the right thing to do, and people will see.
How far do you? Oh, sorry, Sam. How far do you think this will go? Like, I know there's probably a lot of people who are nervous. Like, oh shit, I'm next. I mean, how?
Well, that's what's happened. That's why Corey he's been on this thing for his whole life. Since he was, 14 or 15, he's been pursuing this kind of, I don't know what you say, this, catharsis for himself and this sense of, need for justice and like wanting to help other people and everything else. But it's because of the whole Harvey Weinstein, Me Too, watershed moment in American culture where all of a sudden, talking about how we interact with each other, between the genders and stuff, like it's galactic what's happening. So that's why he has a new thing. I'll share one thing that my oldest daughter's in college at Harvard, and we were so excited to get her set up there. And we went back, and she's a junior now, but we went back and we got her in her dorm room, and it was so exciting for us. And I went and visited her a couple months after she had been there, and we got to talking, and it was clear she's a tough girl. She's did a lot of high school. Her high school experience was she was cheerleader, she was mock trial, she was in drama. She was like there was no grass growing under her feet. She was not a wallflower. She was a go out and get them kind of a student and athlete and like that kind of thing. She was scared. She's like, Dad, you don't understand. When I walk from this building to that classroom, I'm passing a bunch of places where I'm a target. People whistle and holler at me. People do all kinds of things. And as a father, all of a sudden I felt like somebody was pouring hot water on me. like a bucket of hot water going down my body. And I'm like, oh my God, I have absolutely failed. I failed as a father. I failed as a man. I failed as a citizen. I failed as a kind of an entity in the world, because that's how women feel all the time, everywhere they go. That's not okay.
But why is that your failure?
It's all our failure, because it's my kid and she felt that way. And if she's feeling that way, then it's my fault, because it's my kid. I take it as my personal responsibility to make sure she's safe and she's okay and she feels strong.
You mean that we haven't created? I mean, women do deal with a bunch of shit that we don't see, like just getting, like I don't get catcalled, or I don't have the menace that a guy's gonna afford. No, I mean it is surprising. Sometimes bigger fellas do, but it's scary to think like, hey, the only reason I'm not being fucked right now is because this stronger person is choosing not to. Like that's a scary way to be.
That's what I'm saying.
That's not the only reason, probably.
That's
no, in my case, no, it's not. That's because I ran out of money.
But like get in an elevator, right, with a girl and a guy that don't know each other, and what's going on in that moment when they're just standing watching the thing go from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and they're just like, what's the energy? Do they really feel like fine and comfortable and totally centered and safe? Or is there a little bit of energy? And the fact is that like human sexuality is just not talked about in a way that is, the Kama Sutra. We need the American Kama Sutra so we can, because sex is great. And flirting is great, and interacting with each other, and but if you do it absent a respect and appreciation for how the other person feels, then you're kind of a dick.
So, what's been your experience in Hollywood? Because you've been there in huge positions, kind of all throughout your life, right? Like every stage of your life, you've got some giant movie role, at least one, if not multiple, pretty giant and iconic roles.
I've been insulated my whole life, almost all my life. I've been married 26 years. I've been together with my wife 27 and a half years. So that's a center, I mean, in terms of, it's a big question. Like in terms of narrow.
Well, so have you, because from an outsider's perspective, I would imagine that you've managed to avoid a lot of the pitfalls, specifically as a kid. Like you don't hear.
Yeah, I was never abused. I never got into drugs and alcohol. Not too much alcohol. I drank a little bit, but never never drank and drive. Never like.
And is that because of your parents? Is that because after the Goonies, you're as big a star as Corey Feldman in that moment as a kid. You're the star of that movie. You're the hero.
Corey's talked a lot about it, so I can refer to it, but it's really up for Corey to say for himself. But like watching him on the set of Goonies and the lack of parental care for him was horrifying.
I see.
And it was, and we all loved and cared about him, but there's like only so much you can do. I mean, he was a cocky kid.
Right.
He was strong-willed and, had a lot of energy and was doing things. And I don't know that, in a certain moment you can go, hey, Corey, I want to talk to you about the lack of parental supervision you have, and let's see how that's going to affect your life. And, in 5 years you're going to get arrested for,
especially when you're a kid,
balloons of heroin in your car. And, yeah, when you're a kid. Well, anybody.
Yeah.
For no one is it a successful enterprise to do that. I mean, maybe certain people can have that influence, and I regret that I maybe couldn't have been more of that to him or something. But he, but that's a big. And then there's genetic predilections to things, and I just got lucky. I had parents who loved me. I had parents who cared about me. I had a father whose expectations of me were really kind of specific. He really wanted me to go to college, make sure I went to college, even if I got to act in shows. He just wanted me to get that diploma and have that experience. And
it was probably actually on that level, it's probably great that there was so much show business in your family, because like when you're a kid and you get this giant movie, there's not this thing that sweeps over your parents like, oh my God, our kid is a star, our kid's in a movie. They understand.
When Lord of the Rings came out, I was definitely not prepared.
Really?
It was overwhelming.
It was
totally overwhelming, and I definitely lost my center and self several times. I don't know how it expressed itself, like not drugs or that kind of thing, but it was definitely like my.
Just because it was so big, or just because at that point in your life you didn't think there was another one, or
I think because my ambition was so big. Like, when you ask a kid what do they want to be when they grow up, like I wanted to be president of the United States. I wanted to be the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. I wanted to be like a filmmaker like David Lean. Like there were no small ambitions. And as soon as Lord of the Rings hit, it was like, world's your oyster. What are you going to do?
Right.
And like I didn't know how to choose. and also because I had gotten really, really fat. And when you get really fat, and you've never been really fat, like really fat. I mean, Samwise was the fat hobbit, the stinking fat hobbit, and which is awesome. Except every time he says that, I really do get mad at him. But like losing, I lost weight again, and like I don't know, man. I just wasn't
so you're
ready.
you're famous and good looking, and but like this whole thing was happening.
It just, you'd look around and you'd see like Orlando Bloom, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Guy,
Yeah.
right, and
Handsome
and
fella.
he went from a guy who nobody had ever heard of him to like
Heartthrob of the century.
Heartthrob of the century, and then Elijah, who'd done movie after movie after movie with really talented, like he was the lead in all these, way more than I ever did.
Yeah.
And like, how did he manage his career? And just looking around, I had a wife and a kid. Part of it was the money, actually. I didn't get paid very well for Lord of the Rings. I actually got paid.
There was bitterness.
No, not bitterness. Just like, we have to sell our house now. What are you going to do? Like literally,
jeez.
yeah.
You had to sell your house?
I had to sell my house afterwards. What happened was the day we lived in a lovely 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, in Sherman Oaks in the flats. So you can always hear the helicopters, police helicopters at night. But it was still a nice little backyard, and we could have lived forever there, and it would have been fine. But I wanted to get a bigger place, so we bought a house up in the hills with a view. And the business manager said to me, "You have to make $250,000 a year." Based on how you spend your money, if you don't increase your expenditures in like a lot of other areas, thank you very much. If you just live your life just like this, but with the new mortgage and the new insurance and all that, you have to make $250,000 a year. And I was like, I've been in college for 4 years at UCLA, and I was like, there's no problem. I can absolutely make $250,000 a year. So I did the audition process and got offered Lord of the Rings, and it was an offer for $250,000 for a year and a half. And I was like, wait a minute. My pen signed this contract, which obligated me to $250 a year, and I'm going to sign this contract, which will make it so that I absolutely cannot satisfy that other thing.
Yeah.
So it was $75,000 a movie. I wrote a book actually. But
$75,000 a movie is what you got?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how about residuals for that?
No residuals.
What about merch?
Oh my God.
Merch, yes.
A little bit of merch.
A little bit of merch.
But still, it's
My
not.
lawyer, I love my lawyer. He was like, during the contract phase, I just couldn't believe it was going to be so little. I'm like, I've made tons more money of this on an individual film, and this is like a galactic movie. But
why is that? Because they know that everyone just wants this role?
Well, it's a power. It's why don't you call Donald Trump? He can tell you. It's about negotiating. When you want them more than they want you, you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Could you have renegotiated for like the
No,
third
you're in a bad
movie?
spot.
No, we did them all at one time, but we did
Oh,
kind of.
I see. So you don't know that the first one
We
is
agreed
huge.
not to talk about it, but when it came time to do publicity for the third film, like I was feeling a little bit better. Is that a good way to get around that?
Why did they take care of you a little bit?
Well, we're not supposed to talk about that particular thing, but yes.
Yeah, you weren't
Yeah.
in such a bad spot anymore.
Yeah, well, but
Which is
by
the right
then,
thing, yeah.
I'd done a lot of other work, and we were fine. It's not that big a deal. Like I'm not asking for anybody to feel sorry for me because of money, but at that moment,
Right.
when I was fat, trying to get skinny, when
I
we're
see.
going from being in college now to having had this incredible experience to now it's going to be like globally famous. Am I going to be the one that they're going to invite to do all the serious radio shows? Am I going to be like, where do I stack up in the 23 great actors who are in there? Am I on the poster? I just didn't, there's no like rule book. You guys sit around and analyze this stuff all day long. You could probably make a lot of money like advising people who pop.
Right.
Who have something that comes out, you can be like, this is the kind of things you need to work. No, there was no, even though I had all that experience with my family and everything and my young success and everything, there was nothing. I got appointed to a presidential council. I was in the Oval Office with President Bush. There was literally no place you couldn't go. And
Did you like him more than, sorry to interrupt, did you like him more than you thought you would when you met him? People
Yeah.
always say that regardless of the politics, when
Yeah.
you meet a guy like that, you like him more than you
I
think.
absolutely liked him more meeting him. I still think, I don't know if he's a war criminal for going into Iraq under false pretenses, but when he shook my hand, this is what I said. He was standing on the seal of the Oval Office, and the way they do it is, the people on the panel are in a line, and then I don't know who it is, Stewart or somebody announces you, Sean Astin, whatever, and then you step on there, you shake hands, you have a moment, maybe a word or two, you turn and take a picture, and then you go step to the other side, and he does that through the whole line,
Sure.
and he gives a speech. Okay, So all I could think was, I have every right as a citizen of this great land to be standing on that seal because he didn't win that election. He was installed as a president. But he has the power, and I respect the office, and I respect the fact that this guy figured out how to get power. And so I was like, when I walk onto that seal and shake his hand, it's not going to be with like glowing whatever. I'm going to shake his hand and look him in the eye and say, "Nice to meet you, sir." Like that's what I'm going to do. So I shook his hand, and his dad. I said to him, "Your father appointed my mother as one of the 1,000 points of light." Remember the Dana Carvey thing, 1,000 points of light?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so my mom was one of those 1,000 points of light. That's the first time I went to the White House, was when she was being recognized at the Kennedy Center or whatever. So I stood and I go, and we shook hands hard, and I looked him right in the eye, and I said, "Your father appointed my mom as one of the 1,000 points of light." And without a blink, he goes, "Then we're both following in the footsteps of greatness." And I was like, fuck, that is awesome. That is awesome. So we took a picture, and I was like, then I started thinking about him differently, like trying to reconcile the policies that I didn't like with a guy who I thought, you can't do that job. You can't shake that many hands and have absolutely no, like. I liked him more.
He won you over. It's a weird charisma that they have, which enables them to get people to vote for them.
It's not charisma. That was charismatic, that line, but it wasn't just that. Okay, so then right after that, he gives a talk where he talks about how the Union might not survive. Like that was the premise of and he points to Abraham Lincoln. There was a time in our life when the Union wasn't certain. And I'm thinking to myself, is he saying that the Iraq War is the same thing as the U.S. Civil War? I'm thinking the guy's crazy. And he goes, and my administration has an agenda for peace. And he looked right at me, and like my mouth dropped open. And I was just like you just did.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, he knows I can tell he's lying. But I just kind of stood there. And then after his speech was over, my mind is just racing. And the council, by the way, was the President's Council on Service and Civic Participation. It was every president of the United States except for, which is the one who had the heart attack at the
Jimmy
Taft?
Carter?
No, Jimmy Carter didn't have a heart attack.
No, I think he meant living presidents.
No. Like in all of the history of the presidents of the United States, the guy was at Taft or Garfield.
Kennedy died of a heart attack?
He did not, as it turns out. And I read all 1,000 pages of that CIA thing that just came out. Now, one thing about Kennedy's heart attack in there, but they've all had some call to service, right? Kennedy said, "Ask not what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country."
Yeah.
So this was Bush's moment to do that. So anyhow. He finishes his talk, and they're like, "Oh, let's have a picture by the HMS Resolute." So we all get behind the desk, and I stand right next to him with my mouth kind of like overlapping his ear behind his shoulder kind of thing. And I'd been doing a television series in Canada, and they actually worked out my schedule so I could fly back and do this thing. And the Canadians, who were not so happy about the Iraq adventure, were like, "You tell that man we don't want him to do this. You tell him not to do this." And the director said, "I worked around the schedule for you. It took me a few hours, and it affected things. Your obligation to me for helping you go be there is remember that evil is what happens when good men do nothing." So I'm standing there the whole time. I'm thinking like, I'm a good man. I have to do something. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I whisper in his ear. I didn't whisper, but I said in his ear, I said, "Mr. President, I'm working with some good Canadians who are very worried. I look forward to going back there tomorrow and telling him what you said here today about having an agenda for peace." And I said it hard. And he snapped his head around. He looked me right in the eye and he goes, "I am down on bended knee every day praying for it." And I said, I believe you. It was powerful, man. It was powerful. So like
when he snapped his head around, he was agreeing with you? He liked what you were just saying?
He was pissed. He knew exactly what I was saying. I was saying, you don't care about peace. You haven't sent an envoy. You're not trying to get Saddam out of there peacefully. You want to fight. You have 150,000 people in Qatar, and you want to fight. And I know you want to fight, and your vice president wants to fight, and Halliburton's going to make $1 trillion, and like this is not right. You have not done everything. If presidents say that it's a last resort, it should be a last resort. And in my little subtle thing, I was saying this isn't a last resort, and you're not doing everything you should be doing. And he snapped his head around. He's like, "You little fucker, I am doing everything I can be doing." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I swear, I thought all the way back, my head is exploding. Like, okay, so if he believes what he believes, what does that mean? What does it mean if this guy, like, is he has he been drugged?
Did you believe in that moment that he believed what he was saying to you?
Absolutely, he absolutely believed.
You
what
knew he was
saying.
not lying and not being a politician, like as a guy.
No way. I was questioning his soul. I was God standing in judgment of a man at that moment, and he was like, I'm doing the right thing, and how dare you?
It's amazing that he reacted with emotion, because that's obviously emotion. And a guy like that in that position, you'd think like, you deal with CEOs who are just business and non-emotional and cut off, but that's an emotional response.
Think of it. I mean, even if it was a vendetta for his dad or revenge for his father's, like the fact that he's in Kennebunkport and Saddam's still in power, and it's like kind of biblical. Even if it's oil strategery that maybe on some level there's people have done the math and our civilization's going to crumble if we don't control the oil. I don't know, whatever rationale there is for it. This was my buddy's running for city council right now. Mm-hmm. My agent is actually running for city council, and we were talking last night. And it's like that's actually kind of a brave thing. It's a brave thing because, the council gets what, I don't know, $500,000 to work with or $2 million or something. And then you're making decisions. And now all of a sudden, once you get elected, it's an office of public trust. Like the possibility for malfeasance is there. The possibility of being falsely accused of malfeasance by opponents is there. All of a sudden, like your cheese is on the line. Well, that's for city council. Right. And so this guy now, the president of the United States, he didn't win the election. Like we now have two presidents who didn't win their elections who served in our country. It's in the recent memory, and it's shocking. But when he was president,
Do you mean Trump too?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think that's he won fair and square? Do you think it's an electoral college issue? Like they should take the electoral college away?
I guess
because he did win. Even if people hate Trump, he did win it fair and square.
Yeah, he wasn't given. He
didn't. In that, he worked the system and the same way
Bush
anybody
won
else
fair and
would
square too, because the Supreme Court chose to stop the recount. That's law. I mean, I cried the day Al Gore was sitting in Congress and all the Congressional Black Caucus was coming up, and he was affirming the votes or whatever it is with the presidential, like the electoral, receiving the whatever that moment is, and they were like, "You won the election, and this is wrong." And he's like, "We live in a country with laws, and if you don't have a second, you have to sit down." And he was like gaveling these people who were defending it. Nobody even saw this. I was in my house crying when I was watching this. So no. He believes in the rule of law. According to the rule of law, George Bush was the president of the United States. The fact that his father had appointed a couple of those Supreme Court justices and his brother was the governor of the place where,
but speaking, I mean, only in Trump, he did win, and I think the electoral college stinks and it should go away. But he did win it fair. I mean, we have to say he won it according to the way the system is set up.
Like there were no extenuating circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shitty system.
No. Hold on. There might be
with the Russia stuff.
Yeah.
You would think that by now, if that were the case, they would have been able to prove it.
It's not a thing you're
going
to ever be able to prove. If I show you a picture of Hillary and an aborted fetus, and then you leave here, and tomorrow you're sitting somewhere else, how much did that picture mean to you? Do you even remember it? Is it in your consciousness? Who knows? Those people showed footage. They I've been watching these hearings. They fueled that thing so that the conversation wasn't about what it should be about. I think Democrats are ridiculous for saying they know it didn't cost the election. The election was won on a razor-thin margin. So, yes, to a constitutional standard, based on the Electoral College and the fact that he took the oath of office, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. But you know what? I live in a state where 3 million more people voted, for her than him. And people are like, well, that's just on if you take away New York and No, you don't take away New York and California. You don't take them away. I live in New York. My friends live in New York. My fellow citizens are in LA, California. I'm a Californian, and all my votes should count.
Yeah.
So
I just think the electoral college is a shitty system, but it is what it is. I don't like it any more than anybody else does.
No, it should be looked at. There's a lot of things that should be looked at. I think we should have a new constitutional Congress.
They're voting on that, right? The Constitutional Convention.
We have to wrap up with Sean there because I could talk to you all day, man. I love the fact that you speak your mind.
Before we wrap up.
We have to promote, by the way, what he's promoting.
That's what I'm going to say. Yeah.
Do.
Because I've binged Stranger Things Season 2. And that's one of those things that's a risky thing to take, I think, because the Season 1 was so well received. It could flop, and it didn't. I actually thought Season 2 was better, which is rare. But,
it's not risky.
Because you knew it was going to be
because the audience wants more.
right.
So you're participating in giving people what they want.
So your
If
character,
it sucks, it's risky. But you knew it wouldn't suck.
your character's dating Winona Ryder's character, and I'm not going to give any spoilers because there are
Yeah.
people who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But there's this scene. Now they've seen the whole thing. I keep
Yeah.
coming back to your scene. I think it might be my favorite scene of the whole season, where you're sitting there with your character sitting there with Winona, and you're going, and now, look at me. I'm dating Joyce Byers.
Yeah.
And it's like this
Yeah.
quintessential
Yeah.
nice guy who's
Yeah.
dating over his
Yeah.
head. You know nothing good is going to come of it. And Winona's even got this like, oh, yeah, it's like cringy, but you feel for the guy because he's just been in the friend zone
Yeah,
all
it's
his
sad
life.
it's
and-
sad that she needs that to be reassuring.
Yeah.
But it is reassuring.
Yeah.
And that, I love that you like that.
Yeah, you just do such a good job of playing this like nice,
you.
just nice friend zone, good guy. who
And
just-
Winona
just
is
wants the
incredible. I
best.
love her to death. And but then you also get like, hey, I love Kenny Rogers. Like,
Just a nerd, yeah. Just
An
never
unabashed Kenny Rogers fan is like, that's going to be good for Joyce.
He's just a guy who's like, he really wants to relate, but he's never quite, he's always just a little too nice. He's just a little outside of what's going on, and it's just, you do an awesome
Thank you so much for the
job.
compliment. I appreciate it. Thank you.